Welcome to Streaming Into the Void, where we discuss the streaming news for the week ending July 5th, 2026. I'm Kim Hollis, digital marketing expert who, like Gloria Gaynor, has survived the worst month of June of my life.
How did you know my karaoke song?
With me is Tim Brighty, content creator and gamer, trying to avoid heat stroke while recording. Yep, that's a thing.
I'm a victim of thermodynamics.
No kidding. Also, David Mumpower, author of Disney Demystified and streaming media analyst, who is making it rain NIL money all over Sacramento State.
That's a lie. College Football 27 is rigged. If you start at Sacramento State, you have $60 at the beginning. I am not joking. $60.
The podcast is produced and edited by Raul Buriel, who's taking a break from celebrating the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift wedding to join us.
I might even set off some fireworks this weekend.
This week, if you haven't gotten Tim a gift for his birthday yet, you're in luck. Comcast is for sale. Guys, what the hell?
You shouldn't have, really.
Really, you shouldn't have.
Yes, please don't.
You know how I've spent the last 7 years saying that Comcast couldn't afford Peacock's billions of dollars of losses indefinitely? Well, Comcast just gave it up. They admit it right now. Peacock has ruined them. I told you so.
I don't think they said that much in so many words.
I told you so.
I'd like to say that this was expected, but that would be disingenuous. Comcast has been trying to make some big moves for years now, going back nearly 10 years to 2018 when Comcast made a bid to buy 20th Century Fox and steal it away from Disney. That was also bidding on the company. Comcast ultimately lost that bidding war and instead turned their attention to Sky, a satellite broadcaster in Europe, taking over that broadcaster as a consolation prize.
Yeah, and as a reminder, they bid $18 billion for Sky and wound up buying it for $40 billion. Part of the reason we're in this mess is that extra $22 billion. I am not joking.
Mm-hmm. But years of stagnating or declining television, internet, and mobile subscribers have weighed on the company, meaning that Comcast's NBCUniversal division hasn't really realized its full potential. The pandemic's impact on the broadcast of the Olympics cannot be underestimated. This factors into what David's talking about with Peacock here. Timing and mismanagement meant that NBCUniversal's launch of its Peacock streaming service was a debacle from which it hasn't ever really recovered.
Yeah, we want to be fair to Comcast. When they bid on Sky, they should have known that Disney was going to bid them up because they had just done the same thing to Disney with Fox. That's a part of the business that they should have anticipated. The pandemic, that caught them off guard. Suddenly they had staggering debt. As a reminder, you can go back and listen to the earliest episodes of this podcast, and we were talking about them having more than $100 billion in debt. It's too much, folks. They have been struggling under that weight of being over-leveraged throughout the 2020s. And on top of that, they just couldn't catch any breaks. But Peacock, that's a self-inflicted wound because what they did was they followed the leader. You cannot get ahead when you're demonstrating herd mentality from the back of the pack. And that's what they've done with Peacock. And that's the reason why this long after the fact, we're still saying Peacock, Peacock, Peacock. That was always the most vulnerable point for Comcast.
Peacock was supposed to launch in conjunction with the Summer Olympics in Tokyo, but the pandemic postponed those Olympics by 1 year, meaning that Peacock launched with basically nothing. While other studios launched their streaming services during the pandemic and quickly accumulated subscribers, Peacock didn't do the same because they expected the Olympics to be their anchor, and instead it just dragged the company down since they did not have the Olympics.
So the point is, they were going to use the Olympics as a Trojan horse. They were going to get people watching the Olympics and then go, you should go ahead and stay on Peacock for this other content. What they hadn't considered was what would happen if they didn't actually have the high level of viewership for the Olympics they had anticipated. The pandemic wrecked them, y'all. It's that simple.
We made it into a meme. Without the Olympics, all Peacock had was The Office. Hey, did you know Peacock has The Office?
Did you know The Office is on Peacock? I think they looked at, wow, look how many people watch The Office on Netflix. When we take it over to Peacock, we're going to get so many subscribers. And then they did not get that many subscribers.
I would argue that NBC Universal's biggest failure was not launching Peacock internationally. And so while other streaming services from HBO Max to Paramount Plus gained subscribers around the world, Peacock has been hamstrung ever since by being a US-only service. But 2025 was going to be a year of big moves for Comcast NBC Universal. First, NBCU split off their cable channels into a separate company called Versant. We believe the intention was to eventually buy Warner Brothers Discovery's cable channel spinoff and merge that with Versant. And that would have happened if Netflix had succeeded in taking over WBD's studio and streaming business. Instead, Paramount Skydance swooped in and made a bid to buy all of WBD. That threw a wrench into the Versant plans and has basically left that spinoff rudderless. Meanwhile, Sky entered into negotiations in the UK to take over ITV's cable and streaming services. But by the end of 2025, it was clear that these moves weren't producing the value that CEO and chairman Brian Roberts wanted for his company. Arguably, the move last month by Fox to buy Roku sealed the deal. As fewer and fewer pieces remain on the table, Comcast needed to make a big move, and so that's what Brian Roberts decided. And so the big news dropped that Comcast was going to split into two companies. NBC Universal will be split off into a separate company. As with Versant, ownership and control will remain under the Roberts family. But what's clear is that Comcast sees its television, internet, and mobile service as a dying business, and the only way for them to unlock the value in NBC Universal is to spin it off.
So we were having a conversation before the podcast, and one of the things we were debating was whether or not the Roberts family should have anticipated this. And I maintain they should not have, because when they purchased NBC Universal, their first bid came in December of 2009. And at that point, there was very little sign that cable television was about to implode. So from his perspective, Comcast was going to increase its broadband service and vertically integrate it with all kinds of content via this new distribution of NBC Universal's products. And I mean, we're talking about a studio that's 100 years old that has all of this classic content on it. It was a match made in heaven, and I totally understand why it looked like a fantastic acquisition in a vacuum. The problem is, in 2017, Rupert Murdoch looked at the board and said, streaming is killing my business at Fox. I have two choices. I can create a streaming service of my own, or I can accept the fact that the game has passed me by and I can sell. And to his credit, he took his chips and he cashed them in. Comcast did the opposite. It turned around and made huge bids. And I want to emphasize this right now as a fun little theoretical. They spent $40 billion on Sky. Since they were in for a penny, they should have gone in for a pound and spent $80 billion for Netflix, which is what its valuation was at that time. These are all what ifs, shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But the reality is the writing has been on the wall for ages that cable television was dying. And Comcast was far too convinced that its broadband service would save it, even though every quarterly report we discuss on this podcast, we say, and oh, by the way, they lost a modest amount of broadband subscribers again. It was oversaturated.
I see Brian Roberts as having been more optimistic. He was a younger man than Rupert Murdoch was back in 2017. I can imagine him looking at the landscape and saying that, yes, he could sell as well, just like Rupert Murdoch did when he sold off the 20th Century Fox assets, or he could expand. And he opted to expand, but as David pointed out, I feel he did so in a cautious way, and that may have been the death knell for his aspirations. Yes, he probably needed to go even bigger than he did, although Sky and the $40 billion he spent there was probably not the big move that he anticipated it being. In fact, if you look at the assets of Comcast as they stand right now with NBCUniversal, Sky is a rather insignificant asset. So that one certainly didn't materialize. We can imagine that Roberts felt burnt by that and didn't necessarily want to make other big moves. Maybe he became overly cautious as a consequence of that, and that could explain where we stand right now with this company.
I mean, it was more that they were over leveraged and he really couldn't make big moves beyond the spinoffs. We've been kind of waiting for some sort of announcement of a Comcast split. You said earlier we couldn't have expected it. The only thing we couldn't expect was the actual timing, although realistically we kind of made this joke the day that Netflix dropped out of the Warner Brothers Discovery bidding, that it actually hurt two companies. It hurt Netflix because they weren't going to get the assets they coveted, but it killed Comcast because that dream of a combined entity with Versant was never going to happen at that point. This is death by 1,000 cuts gradually over a 15-year period.
10 years ago, Brian Roberts was a young man, at least in comparison to Rupert Murdoch. But 10 years on, with a company that hasn't grown, he's been looking to see what the fate is of his company. And we've been looking at succession at Comcast ever since. Mike Cavanaugh was brought on as co-CEO at Comcast, and he was previously expected to take over the company when Roberts retired. Cavanaugh now becomes the head of the new company, NBCUniversal, which leads us to the inevitable conclusion that what Comcast and Roberts really wants is to sell everything, either in part or in whole, despite the fact that Roberts denies this. He has openly said that, no, he doesn't want to sell. I want to split the companies. But without a co-CEO standing by his side, the fact is that his retirement now is going to get pushed back because you need to train somebody else up to take over your job. So Roberts may have announced that he's splitting his company in two, but really what's going to happen is that either the entire whole will get sold or the assets will be sold off in part. The likely buyer for the Comcast side of the house, the cable, television, internet, and mobile company at this point is probably Charter, who is currently completing their acquisition of competitor Cox. The timing is key here as the pieces are falling into place. Just as Fox announces their bid for Roku, a company that would have been a really good fit for Comcast, Charter and Cox are sealing the deal on their merger. The decks are being cleared for Charter to make their next move, a presumably friendly bid for Comcast, a company with which they've already done partnerships, such as with their set-top box technology. If Comcast's television, internet, and mobile services are sold to Charter, this takes us to the question of what happens to the NBCU part of the company. Does that leave NBCU as a buyer or a seller?
It is an asset to be acquired, and we all know it. This has just kicked off another round of mergers and acquisitions, and the way you know that is because Comcast immediately stated, we're not doing this because we expect to do mergers and acquisitions. Their nose grew 3 sizes that morning. It was ridiculous. You could hear an entire industry scoff when they said it. And folks, this is going to be bad for NBCUniversal. There are not a lot of places on the board that are going to want all of the NBCUniversal assets collectively. They're going to want to carve them up Kirk Kerkorian style. This is going to be grim because we've been talking about it, and let's say that Netflix comes in and buys NBCUniversal. Netflix has never had assets of that scale before. They're going to want to sell that content to the best of their ability. They're not going to want to run theme parks. They have no experience running theme parks. They're not ready for that. So the odds are pretty good that private equity is going to come in and wind up running Universal Studios as a theme park business. And then we start looking at it, who would actually buy NBCUniversal for the content library? That's not going to be just Netflix. That is a desirable asset. Apple, Amazon, these are the types of players that are going to look at this and go, yum, that's really, really tasty. But here's the thing. Media always looks better on the outside than the inside. Once you get inside this industry, you start realizing the vertical integration can actually be detrimental to your bottom line rather than an asset. We talk about this a lot with Disney. And the problem Disney faces is when, let's say, they're doing really well at the movies and the theme parks, suddenly streaming is a problem. ESPN is a problem. One of their assets is always holding back the others, at least in the eyes of Wall Street investors. So we're looking at this and we're seeing it from the NBC Universal perspective. It's grim. It really is.
So yeah, now the speculation game begins because the likelihood of another studio acquiring NBC Universal is low. With Disney having taken over 20th Century Fox and Paramount poised to take over Warner Brothers, we need to look to see where else there are buyers. Netflix is probably at the top of that list. Netflix, whose leadership came right out and said that, oh, they learned a lot in their attempts to take over Warner Brothers, and they happen to have this war chest just waiting to be used somewhere, so why would it be Netflix? But there are other options, mostly probably tech companies. I mean, who would have guessed that Oracle would be the company bankrolling the takeover of Paramount and then the takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery? Yes, there are other tech companies out there, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, and Google's Alphabet. I'm not suggesting that any one of them is necessarily interested in getting into the movies and theme park business, but if there's those companies, what other companies are out there that are willing to spend the money to get into the content creation business? We're still in the early stages of this conversation. The news was announced on Monday. Brian Roberts says he's not looking to sell. No one believes that. There's going to be buyers out there circling, waiting to snap this company up. We're left to speculate as to just who and what are those buyers or even sellers.
Whenever a company swears we're absolutely not going to do that, you can be pretty sure that they're going to do that, and that's where we're at right now. Somebody else is going to own NBC Universal in 5 years. Long story short, it's frustrating that we've gotten to this point, but it also feels inevitable. We're still feeling ripple effects of the pandemic to this day.
Okay, Tim. So it's a holiday weekend as we all celebrate your birthday.
Absolutely.
So is the box office, reflecting that?
Well, July 4th is kind of never been the best holiday for box office. People would rather see fireworks than be in a movie theater, even if it is ungodly hot outside.
Yeah, Tim, let's go ahead and stretch that out. What is the absolute worst day for the holiday to fall on from a box office perspective?
Oh, hey, Saturday. Guess what? That's what happens this year. The big release this weekend is Minions and Monsters. We are recording on Friday because of the holiday. It did start out on Wednesday with 14.2 million and then 10.8 million on Thursday. So it's got cool 25 million already headed into the weekend. But this is the Minions franchise. This is the Despicable Me franchise. These movies tend to do quite a bit better than that. We had Minions, the spinoff of Despicable Me, of course, back in 2015. That opened to 115 million. In 2022, we had Minions, The Rise of Gru, 107 million. Minions was well over $1 billion worldwide. Rise of Gru came close, 937 million. This is not the best start for it, and the calendar configuration does not work in its favor at all.
Ironically, I understand this is actually the best reviewed of the franchise.
Yes.
But that's not going to help. I don't think.
No, that the target audience does not matter. They want to see, Minions. If it's, good, it'll catch on streaming, but that doesn't help the box office.
Hey, Tim, what studio is this?
Oh, hey, isn't that Universal? Uh-oh.
What a week they're having. They are actually the real life implementation of the "this is fine" meme straight out of the no mergers and acquisitions. What?
So yeah, not much to go on off 2 days headed into a holiday weekend where one of the weekend days is a holiday and it's a terrible time to have a holiday. So we will discuss this probably more next week when we have full details on that. But I'm not optimistic about its weekend here. I mean, it's going to have a pretty good Friday, but it's going to fall apart Saturday because, again, July 4th, one of the rare anti-holidays at box office. And you put that on a Saturday, ooh, that is historically never a good thing. Oh, by the way, of course, Toy Story was the top movie last weekend, not Supergirl. Toy Story had 70 million for its second weekend. It is now headed into this weekend, 626 million worldwide. Should have just enough to get to $1 billion, shouldn't it?
I think it's going to get to $1 billion. We'll have to wait and see. Again, international box office works so much differently than it did before the pandemic, but it is looking at crossing 700 million this weekend, possibly by quite a bit, depending on how the holiday goes. We're a little hesitant to speak in finite terms because we have been kicked in the groin before by July 4th Saturday box office. I cannot emphasize enough how detrimental that is to the entire box office release schedule on a Saturday, because people spend Saturday, July 4th, other places than movie theaters, even when, as Tim joked, it's 100 degrees outside. It's just not what we tend to do. And so that hurts things. I don't know whether that's going to be the case internationally, where it's not a holiday and it shouldn't impact it. But I will say Toy Story's second weekend internationally wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. So I feel comfortable extrapolating domestically or internationally right now. Just my gut is it's going to get to $1 billion.
Yeah, and with Moana next weekend, that's interesting things to watch in the Disney department. Oh, by the way, Supergirl, yeah, just kind of disaster all around with a 37.1 million weekend and didn't even really have good weekdays. It's not even at 50 million headed into this weekend, which won't make things better. This one is a absolute disaster. Warner Brothers was doing so well in 2025 and then just, record scratch.
Hollywood Reporter already has a what went wrong with Supergirl article, which means that there's definitely people on the inside who are running from this project and trying to shift the blame.
Yeah, the knives are out for a bunch of people on this one. I'm looking forward to hear your thoughts about this movie role. I heard you saw it in theaters.
Oh, yeah. I will definitely let you know all my
Okay. Oh, I will look forward to that.
I want to emphasize this so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. We know life moves fast these days, but they've done a what went wrong for a film that's in its seventh day of release when we record this. What?
Exactly. Some of these people must have been just waiting for this movie to flop before they just unloaded on people. Wow.
On the bright side, Hollywood has obviously learned their lesson, as Zach Krager has been commissioned by Warner Brothers to write a horror movie based on the Siren Head internet meme. All is right in the world.
I understood the first part. Zach Krager did weapons. Then you lost me. Right.
It's our YouTube joke of 2 weeks ago come to life.
Yep.
Of course. All right. Thank you, Tim. How about we talk about the ratings?
Okay. We have the Nielsen streaming ratings for Monday, June 1st to Sunday, June 7th, 2026. It's that time again, folks. It is Love Island month here and the ratings. It is back, a tradition unlike any other, premiering on Peacock on June 2nd. It is the 8th season of this show that basically pumps out at least one episode every day over the course of the month. It is, of course, your top original series, 1.3 billion minutes. Now, amusingly, this is obviously shown up before. It's credited as Love Island USA because it's a American-made version of Love Island, which was a UK show. Previously, it's been here before, credited to Peacock because that's where it's airing. This time, Nielsen has decided to credit it to Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, and Peacock. And if you're curious as to why, it's because the first 3 seasons of this show, which began in 2019, aired on CBS. Now, that makes sense that it would then air on Paramount Plus. Then those 3 seasons are indeed still available. However, due to some strange arrangement between Paramount, CBS, and Disney, Disney also has the rights to those 3 seasons, and they are all available for you to watch on Disney Plus as well. It is not the reason it is here that the fact that it is on Disney Plus and Paramount Plus, because those are the old seasons. You wanted the new season, which of course dropped an episode every day beginning on June 2nd, all through the rest of the month of June into mid-July. It'll finish airing on July 12th. So it's back and here to stay, folks, to dominate these ratings for the next few weeks. I can't wait.
It is a rare sign of strength on Peacock. I mean,
it is basically their only strength at this point. I mean, yeah, they had the Olympics, but we joked about it last year. We're like, just rebrand the Love Island network at this point because it apparently gets people to watch. I don't know what it is about this particular show that has hooked people, but yeah, it's impressive. I will give it that.
Pitch for you guys at Peacock for free, guys. The Traitorous Housewives of Love Island.
There is one potential challenger, though, and that is in second, and that is Dutton Ranch. 840 million minutes for now 5 episodes, releasing episodes weekly. The first season finale actually available as of today, as we record this, July 3rd. So it does continue to show some growth with each episode. Again, a lot of minutes for not a lot of content. And somehow these Taylor Sheridan shows just manage to just impress every time a new one arrives. The 4 seasons, we saw that return last week with the arrival of its second season, 799 million minutes in third for 16 episodes. And yes, this one's been renewed for a third. If this doesn't have 4, I think we are legally obligated to riot. Spider Noir is fourth, 739 million minutes for 8 episodes on Prime Video after premiering last week. Okay, hold for its full week. Hey, what was one of the biggest movies at the box office of 2026 so far? Oh, that Michael Jackson biopic? You probably searched Michael Jackson on Netflix and you were rewarded with Michael Jackson, The Verdict. 731 million minutes for 3 episodes. This is about his mid-2000s trial for a alleged horrific act, which the movie does not touch on at all because it ends way before this incident occurs. But there you have it. The Burrows drops to 661 million minutes for 8 episodes. No wonder it was canceled. Off Campus, again, showing remarkable resiliency, 483 million minutes for its 8-episode season in 7th. The Boys, one more time, at least 432 million minutes for 40 episodes and 5 seasons, Prime Video. So again, 3 Prime Video shows on the chart this week. New in 9th, The Witness, 425 million minutes for a 3-episode docuseries about a true crime event. We have to put a pin in this one for a moment because it will come up again on the movies chart, actually. Your Friends and Neighbors wraps up originals in 10th, 403 million minutes, 19 episodes from Apple TV Plus. And as we've been tracking it over the last few weeks, it's managed to stay on this list as its second season wraps up over the last few weeks. This was its finale on June 5th.
Yeah, we don't really talk about it a lot, but Apple has really found its rhythm in making sure that one show gets consistent viewership every 2 or 3 months. Like, we're actually just starting Silo right now, and I expect the same thing from it because it's charted in the past. They will market their shows effectively to the people who subscribe to Apple TV, and that may seem like a little thing, but Peacock's never done it. So there you have it.
Yeah, Apple has firmly taken over as the prestige streaming service, if you will. We joked about how the only thing they would ever chart was Ted Lasso because no one subscribed to Apple, but they've surprised us with some shows and even a couple movies here and there. Your Friends and Neighbors, again, held on for quite a few weeks as it added episodes weekly. We never did see Widow's Bay, but there's still time. Its finale would arrive in a couple weeks on these ratings. And then Silo, the 3rd season of that one, just arrived as well. Good on them. You made something of yourself. Movies is led by Hoppers. Yay! 1.1 billion minutes on Disney Plus, of course, after arriving on June 2nd.
Woo! The good guys win.
Yay.
Everyone watch Hoppers.
Oh my gosh. I have had to tell so many people watch this movie. They're like, what is it? I'm like, it's a Pixar movie. Just watch it and thank me later. You will not be disappointed. New in second, Office Romance. 655 million minutes from Netflix. This was the romantic comedy starring Jennifer Lopez and Brett Goldstein that arrived on June 5th. I completely forgot about this one for a moment. I was like, oh, right. Of course, we mentioned it. It's a decent start. And again, just the weekend. So, hey, could go higher next week. David, you're in third.
Underrated as always.
Premiering on Netflix on June 3rd. This was a theatrical release last fall. It is an animated version of the biblical figure. Goat from Netflix has also been here for a couple weeks now, 328 million minutes in 4th, as has Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan Ghost War, 270 million minutes in 5th, Prime Video. Zootopia 2, Disney Plus, 256 million minutes. Former top movie The Crash is still here as well, 231 million minutes on Netflix. And now the funniest thing of the week. In 8th, Passengers, 205 million minutes from Netflix. I was like, well, we did just flip the calendar to June. Maybe this showed back up on Netflix on June 1st. No, this is, of course, the 2016 movie starring Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. However, I have no verification on this, but this is the simplest explanation, so I'm going with it. A few weeks ago in late May, there was a movie that premiered in theaters called Passenger. No S, not to be confused with Passengers. The weekend that Mandalorian and Grogu opened, it was in 6th place, 8.7 million. I'm assuming people then searched for it on Netflix and got Passengers and decided to watch that instead.
Yeah, that seems likely. Sure.
Yeah, Passenger, again, is a 2026 supernatural horror film. Kind of got buried in the, craze of Obsession and Backrooms. It's not on the level of those. But I feel like, enough people probably thought that this was something on Netflix and they searched for it. Anyway, we mentioned The Witness on Originals. That is the dramatization of the events. And there is a companion documentary, The Murder of Rachel Nichol, 175 million minutes for 9th place on the movies chart. Both of these arrived on Netflix on on June 4th. This apparently occurred in the UK, so it was a much bigger story over there, but enough people were interested to get both things on the ratings. Movies wraps up with K-pop Demon Hunters, so we can all breathe easy. It's back in 10th, 167 million minutes on Netflix, of course. We're nearing 1 year of that movie, too, by the way. It's been out for a year already. Acquired is 10 shows we've seen before, we're pretty sure, led by Bluey, 859 million minutes for its 154 episodes. We had a debate, had we seen Young Sheldon before? Because that's here in 9th, and yes, we have at least once, but it's been a while. 525 million minutes in 9th place, 141 episodes credited to HBO Max and Netflix, just in time for one of the spin-offs to come in a few weeks. Euphoria manages to hang on this list as well, which I guess makes sense because the final episode of the third season arrived on the Sunday of last week's rating, so it manages to stay on the list. 666 million minutes for its 24 episodes in 5th. Some interesting things, but yeah, just get used to Love Island being the top show for like the next month and a half, folks, because that's where we're headed. But at least you can watch Hoppers as well.
All right. Thanks, Tim. As always, we close out with what's been keeping us busy over the last week. And I've actually watched and done quite a bit of stuff, surprisingly. But I'm going to talk about a game that is on Steam. I've been playing on the Steam Deck. It is called Lost and Found Co. And it is a hidden objects game, but it has a really delightful story. The hidden objects aren't easy to find, but when you do find them, they tend to lead to other pieces of the story. The characters are extremely lovable. There are a lot of really charming pop culture references throughout the game, and I warmly recommend it. It is very highly rated on Steam, and I totally see why. If you're just looking for something that is calm and cozy and sweet, this is the perfect game for that.
Oh, yeah, 97% positive for the coveted overwhelmingly positive. And yes, I noticed you playing it, and I'm like, oh, that looks very, very cozy. I suppose as I'm getting older, I just want something just cozy and relaxing to poke at it now and then. So yeah, okay, maybe
Exactly.
I'll look at this while it's on. I'll look for it while it's on sale.
Yeah, very charming. Raul, what's been keeping you busy?
First, I dropped over $100 on the Steam summer sale this week, despite the fact I haven't played a game on a PC in like decades. You guys are a bad influence.
That's exactly why I barely looked. And the only game I got Kim, she played for an hour and then she said, ooh, would you buy me this instead? Which is the game she just mentioned. So Tim's game is the one I got her. And then the game she talked about's that. So this is why I don't look at Steam sales anymore.
So my daughter and I went to see Supergirl in theaters last weekend.
Oh, lucky. I bet that was great.
No, I want to be clear here. I'm not a hater. I love the idea of female superheroes. I think we should have more female superhero movies. Supergirl was done dirty by the makers of this movie. It is an outrage what they did here. It is a terrible movie that has frankly sunk this character and may have sunk the DC franchise as a whole because it was so mismanaged. I would rather that they have not released this movie, gone back to the drawing board, and come back in a year or 18 months with a better Supergirl movie, but now we're well beyond that. That ship has sailed. There's too many things to enumerate here about what's wrong with this movie, but instead I'll visit a single scene during the second act. The second act is honestly where the movie falls apart. I imagine something has to have happened in the writing of this movie that just utterly destroyed this movie in the second act. But I'll tell you about a scene where Supergirl has been invited into the home of a couple because they've promised that they can help her find this bad guy she's looking for. And they have her stay in this one room as the couple goes to have a conversation about this bad guy. And Supergirl wants to know what this conversation is that this couple is having because she's a little suspicious of them. And she does two things that's going to take you out of the movie. First, she tiptoes down the hall from the room she's in to see if she can approach this couple. And second, she eavesdrops on them from around the corner so she can hear what they're saying.
Doesn't she have super hearing and can't she fly?
Yes, she does. Yes, she can. This is Supergirl, and there are certain parts of this movie where she loses her powers because honestly, that's the only way you're going to do a Supergirl movie where Supergirl is in any way vulnerable. But this isn't one of those scenes. In fact, this is immediately after that scene in the trailer where she beats up with her superpowers a bar full of ruffians. So she is fully powered at this point. She is suspicious of this couple and she wants to hear what this couple is saying. She should be able to use her super hearing. She wants to sneak up on this couple, so she tiptoes down a hall. There's even a moment where she steps on a step in a staircase and it makes a little creaking sound and she has to stop. She could have flown the entire time and never touched the ground. And then when she does approach the couple, they invite her to sit down at a table and they offer her something to drink. Let's all remember, she is suspicious of this couple. She immediately takes the drink and drinks it, and oh, hey, lo and behold, it's poison, which again should not affect someone like Supergirl, but it does. Why did she drink it in the first place? Why is it affecting her? It is an utter lack of understanding of what this character can do. There is numerous moments in this movie where it's clear that the writers knew where they had to get the character and then just lazily wrote a scene to get the character there. It is poorly written. It is poorly thought out. I don't think there's anything wrong with the direction of the movie whatsoever. The acting, for what it's worth, is great. You can't put any of this on the actors, but at no point did they have a good script. It is just so sad, and it feeds into this hatred that so many people have about strong female leading characters. It's just a tragedy that this movie was done so dirty by its creators, and I don't know that anything could overcome what has happened here.
Okay, Tim, what's been keeping you busy?
I didn't put a lot of time into it because it was just extremely uncomfortable in my place right now because of the heat, and I felt like even something not excessively taxing would still overwhelm my computer. But there's a game that's been out for a couple months now called Retro Rewind, the video store simulator. It is the latest in the long lines of, I guess, capitalism simulator type games where you just manage a business and you play business. And in this one, as it says on the tin, you operate a video store a la like, early 90s, Blockbusters or family video stores. And you start out small. You just have a couple shelves, a small collection of movies. You throw them on the shelves and people bring them to you and you scan them on your thing and collect the rental fees. And then they bring it back and you scan it in the system to put it back on the shelf and repeat. And that is the gameplay loop. People will, sometimes request a movie and they'll say, oh, I want a horror movie, but I want one that's good or I want one that's bad. And most of the movies have tags of that sort of thing where you can then give it to them and they'll rent it, which of course gives you more money. And as you improve, you will expand the store with other services such as, popcorn and more shelves and more movies, and even at some point you're even renting out VCRs. So I'm looking forward to spending more time with it. I feel like at some point, once you've unlocked everything, there's no real other guidance unless you set goals for yourself in terms of like, oh, I want to see if I can make this amount of money, or let me unlock all the achievements the game offers. They tend to run out of steam at that point, and that seems to be one of the only criticisms about the game so far. They are adding content. They're expected to add video games to rent at some point too. Right now, it's worth it. It's on part of the Steam sale. It's $16. I'm sure I will get that much enjoyment out of it, and it's 95% positively reviewed too. So yeah, this one is fun so far, and they've managed to make the loop addicting enough to keep me interested so far.
And David, what's been keeping you busy?
So I'm not very far into it yet, but yesterday was the holiest day on the calendar for me because I have grown obsessed with the college football series. EA, I have a love-hate relationship with because I've been with EA since the very, very beginning. I play Madden all the way back when it didn't have all the teams. You can actually look that up. During the first year of Madden, they only had 16 teams. It had been a computer game, and they'd never thought people might want less popular teams. That's how far back I go with EA, and yet they kick me in the teeth more than anyone I've ever met in my life, and they're doing it again this year, but I'm going to overlook all of the mercenary business practices they use and just focus on the positive. College Football 27 is now available in early release, which means if you pre-purchased the right game, you could start playing it on July 1st. The game doesn't actually come out until July 8th. I'm stressing that in case you're listening to this podcast and you think, ooh, I'll play that tonight. There are ways you can go ahead and play it, but It's not for everyone right now. This is my happy place already. Kim will tell you I played this video game series more than anything else. It kind of replaced Halo for me, which is the highest praise I can give a game. Well, as fate would have it, this year is an inflection point for college football as a video game franchise because they have finally added NIL. It is glorious. They have set it up so that if you play with one of the top teams in the country, you are punching down, just like in real life. And that's why everybody always roots for the upset. Because we know at this point, the best teams in the country have paid for their success. That's the only way it works at this point. So if you see a team like a few years ago, TCU, the Horned Frogs had the Hypnotoad thing, people loved it because they knew TCU had no business being in the national championship game. It was David versus Goliath. Well, when I play Dynasty mode on CFB, I don't play the good teams. I play teams like Sacramento State. And yes, I wasn't joking earlier. I started with 60 NIL. I can't sign Tim for $60, okay?
Nope.
Tim has more pride than that. So you can imagine how hard a rebuild it is to get the Hornets. We had to look up their name. The Sacramento State Hornets are about to become a juggernaut in my fantasy world, and I cannot wait for it. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I will probably talk about this 2 or 3 more times over the next 6 months because this is the video game I love the most. Recruiting is just my favorite thing on the planet, so much so that Raul, Tim, and I have been working on a little project, and we'll probably work on it more.
That's always the allure of the college basketball games. I don't want to coach Duke. I want to take like Stetson and turn them into a multi-time national champion.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what we really want. We don't say it, but what we want is chaos. And so these games encourage chaos. And that's what we're looking for. We live in a world now where a quarterback can bet on football on his team, and some billionaire lunatic will fight tooth and claw to find a corrupt judge that will actually allow that person to play. And it got so bad that at one point the conference was suing the college. That's how crazy modern athletics has gotten on the collegiate, in air quotes, campuses. So I want my video games to reflect that, and I want to be able to take the Sacramento State Hornets to glory. Join me in my journey, won't you?
Thank you for listening to Streaming Into the Void. Please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, and we welcome your feedback. Remember that we're on social media at Streaming Void and online at streamingvoid.com. If you like what you're hearing, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/streamingvoid. Be sure to watch for us again next week.